Some of you might remember episode number 169, where I was talking about my personal journey of this podcast. And not only through this episode, but also in general, people are constantly asking me, are you successful with your podcast? And the answer is quite simple, because I always say yes. Because in my opinion, success is something different compared to most of the people who are asking. My personal goal is to make people being more kind to each other, and in addition, also through this podcast, to communicate that we have to drink less but better, so drink more consciously. And it's not about the money, it's not about the reach, it's not about the followers and earning money with followers. This could happen in addition, but my personal goal is simpler. And your feedback shows me that I reach my goal every single day. Thank you very much for sharing that with me. And right now, because the second reason for this podcast is to keep you updated on what was going on in the wine industry, we will look on what has happened in the last few days in the wine industry, in the beer industry, and maybe also in general. Have fun with the episode. Welcome to the Pinot and Pixel podcast episode number 178, the weekly update on July 27th. Olympia has started, and for those of you who were waiting for the first episode with my Carlsberg hat, unfortunately, Carlsberg UK recently told me that they only ship my gift that I won in the raffle to a UK address. So my friend Tommy Grimshaw agreed on helping me out, and I will send it over to him, and I will receive it in October when I visit the UK again. So 2 more things for you guys. 1, if you are interested in joining this England trip, we will visit several wineries in the area around Bristol. So UK wineries, we will go to a cheese factory, we will go and see wineries in Wales, and you will get a brief overview on the wine industry in England. So if you want to join a trip, just send me a message on podcast@pinotpixel.com. And second, if you are interested in having this beautiful cork hat with Pinot, because you are a Pinot fan or because you just like the hat, this one is available in the online shop right now, pinotpixel.com. And right now, we start with the weekly update. The first news that popped up was that Bordeaux is still struggling with reaching their goal of ripping out at least 10,000 hectares of vines that are not really able to produce good wine, or at least they just have to be ripped out. They're currently sitting around 3,000 hectares and 2/3 still yet to be pulled. And this is not something that will happen until the end of the year. In addition, there were some bad news on this year's En Primeur campaign because it wasn't that successful. And due to this fact, I decided to make an extra episode. And for those of you who are already waiting for this episode, it will come at the latest in mid-August because it's a lot of preparation, but it should be an episode on what is recently going on in Bordeaux, maybe with a bit of history of the En Primeur campaign and what might be the best picks for the 2024 campaign, the 2023 vintage. The second thing that really blew the wine industry this week, the billionaire Wood Chen. He's from Taiwan, and he's quite famous for being a collector. I mean, he's a rich guy, but he's also famous for being a wine collector. And not only him, but also his brother. Yeah, his brother Pierre Chen is also famous for being a collector of quite expensive wines. And both of them sold wines not only through Sotheby's, but through auction houses and through their own companies. And several collectors recently discovered that there were wines that might have been counterfeit. And this article tells the story of how they tried to figure out who exactly was responsible for the fraud. And it's not quite easy. What they did is they tracked the history of some of the bottles that have been identified as counterfeit, and they tracked it back to a company called Top 100 Wines, has been the source of many of those wines. And it's a bit weird when you read the feedback he gave on this specific case, because people identified wines as being counterfeit. There were the wrong corks. There was a cork of 98 in a bottle of 95. There were labels that didn't show up like the normal ones, so it was a bad copy actually, because there were things on the label that don't have to be there, that didn't have to be there. And his answer was, listen to that: you cannot conclude that all the wines are fake from one tasting session. Only 3 or 4 out of 11 bottles at that tasting session, the specific one where they were identified, were from my collection, and it's uncertain if those wines were from me. Moreover, and this is more funny, one cannot assume wines are fake just because they taste similar. If wine temperature is too high, the taste can be similar. And then he adds, with many wines in the collection, having some bad ones is normal. If a wine is over 20 years old, the spoilage rate is at least 15% to 20%. For wines over 30 years, it's about 30%. And over 40 years, about half of it. And I mean, he's not wrong. The older a bottle gets, the higher the percentage might be that the bottle is faulty or not sitting at its very best state condition. But this cannot be the justification for counterfeit bottles. So this case is a bit awkward. The fake scandal, nevertheless, has caused a panic, especially in the Taiwanese market. People started to ask for getting their bottles refunded, so they wanted to get their money back, and he agreed on giving them the money back. It lays kind of a shadow on the industry again, and those are the stories where I really feel bad for collecting old wines. Because most of those people, and especially the reason for counterfeit bottles, is not because people want to enjoy this kind of stuff. It's because they want to earn money with bottles like that. And there is a very specific case mentioned in that article. There is a bottle of Domaine du Jacques Grand Cru Chambertin with 400 to 500 bottles distributed worldwide every single year. And in Taiwan, recently, 2 collectors, one bought 200 bottles and the other one bought 400 bottles. Just think about that. I mean, even if you are a serious collector, if you know that there is a rare bottle and you are able to buy 100% of one vintage as a single person, you should think about that. It's a bit strange, actually. Now, we will keep you updated on what was happening in that case, because it's actually quite interesting, and it's bottles that are worth way over 600 million euro in his cellar. We still don't know if he is responsible for the counterfeit or if he also has been someone who bought a collection or many collections with counterfeit wines. But it's a bit, it feels a bit strange. Let's put it like this. From fraudulent wine in Taiwan, big bottles, Bordeaux, Burgundy, and Champagne, we will go to Champagne. And there were 2 news that were quite interesting of the last weeks. There was an article in Yahoo Finance from Reuters, July 19th, so over a week ago. And it was called Champagne Makers Call for Reduced Grape Harvest After 15% Drop in Sales. So Champagne has too many bottles in the cellar, and they saw a huge drop in sales, under 300 million bottles last year. And right now, they try to level the demand and the sale. And the call was to reduce the yields for 2024. And guess what happened? Maybe this is coincidence, but 4 days later, it was announced that Champagne limits its yields for the 2024 vintage to 10,000 kilos per hectare. It's still a lot compared to other regions. Just to give you a feeling, when you talk to small, high-quality producers, I mean, it also depends on where it's located and how the climate is over there. But I would say, just generally speaking, if you talk to small, high-quality producers, the yield of high-quality grapes and wines is usually between 3,000 and 4,000, just to give you a feeling, kilos per hectare. So you have more concentrated fruit, you have more complexity, you have higher quality. It's not, you cannot just measure it by the years, but just to give you a feeling, I would expect more quality of vineyard with 4,000 kilo per hectare than 10,000. Nevertheless, the usual level was 11,400 kilos until last year, and this year they reduced it to 10,000 kilos per hectare, so 12% down, and almost 70% lower than 2022, because in 22 it was still 12,000 kilos per hectare. And this is only one way how they tried to regulate the overproduction and of course also the general availability of wines, and not only in Champagne. This could also be an interesting fact for other regions, but just Champagne is the first to know. And I mean, Champagne is one of those regions that everybody is talking about and has an eye on, and it was just a huge thing for the industry when they saw this drop below the 300 million bottles line last year. We will have a closer look on that, and in addition, of course, Champagne recently was hit by severe weather events. They had hail, they had late frost, and there is still the possibility for hail, and usually it happens in August if it happens, and this can reduce yields as well. So we will have an eye on that, and at the latest in September, October, we will talk about the harvest situation in Champagne. Talking about Champagne, there is a very, very fresh and exclusive announcement. It was sent to me by my dad. Thank you very much. I looked it up on Instagram because this is the original one. A Polish research team discovered a shipwreck in the Baltic Sea with over 100 bottles of ancient champagne. The ship is said to be around 150 years old, and those over 100 bottles might be bottles of Louis Roederer's Cristal, because they think it could be one of the ships out of the fleet of the Tsar, the Russian Tsar, and this could get very, very interesting. It was just posted 3 days ago. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to discover many articles until today. The date of recording is Friday morning, so maybe in the next days we will know more about it. It was discovered, of course, it's still secret, the place, but it was discovered 30 kilometers away from the coast in Polish territory. I will be able to tell more, I guess, in the next weeks. And I mean, it's not just that easy. It wasn't talked about how deep the wreck is located, but imagine the difference of pressure undersea compared to our normal situation. And sometimes it's not easy, and it's not possible just to bring them up and examine or analyze the bottles. It's definitely quite interesting because I don't know if you know that, but when you store bottles undersea, especially when it's getting deeper, I would say 10 meters and plus, it's dark, it's cool, and there is no oxygen. So this means the bottle is protected against every influence of oxygen and light. So there is no oxidation. And I mean, of course, some things can happen with the bottle. Maybe there is a problem with the cork and then the bottle gets diluted or so. But usually stored undersea, this could really be possible to be a very, very fresh champagne still. And there was a shipwreck found in some years ago, I guess, in the channel between the UK and Europe, with some, I guess, 100 bottles of Petrus, and they were also quite fresh. And there's many, many stories of champagne bottles or ancient Bordeaux bottles found in the shipwreck that were fresh as hell because, I mean, they are stored in the best way possible. I would love to try a bottle like that, not because of the price, but just to get a feeling on the difference of a bottle stored 150 years undersea. Just the imagination, isn't that crazy? Impressive. Maybe one day I'll be able to. I mean, there is companies today that jump on that train because there's a lot of marketing behind it. But of course, you can age bottles undersea just for 12 months, for 18 months, and you will have a difference between the normal one and the one that was stored undersea because of the conditions. The bottle should be fresher usually than the one, I don't know, stored in a wine cellar or in a cave or so. Problem is usually you're not able to buy both bottles to compare them against each other because you will discover there might be a difference, but is it worth, I don't know, double the price? Usually it's not. It's a lot of marketing involved. In addition, you have those beautiful bottles aged undersea because you have those snails and the mussels and algae and everything on the bottle. It's just beautiful. And again, is it worth double the price? Your decision. I would say no, it's not. Coming from Champagne to another famous region for sparkling wines. We're going to the UK, talking about English sparkling. We have talked about Chapel Down, thinking about selling the company to bidders, and Treasury Wine Estates was one of those companies who were considered to be a potential buyer. And right now, Treasury Wine Estates denied that they will take over Chapel Down. Is it big news? I don't know. I mean, Chapel Down is the biggest producer of English wine with 950 acres in total. And of course, it's a big thing when they would be sold to especially a big international player. And I mean, just the speculation shows the international interest in the English market. And it's not the first company that is said to be sold or puts itself up for sale or has been sold. We talked about Hambledon that has been sold last year. There's another one in the game, Gusbourne, was put up for sale. And if you don't know Gusbourne, I really like the wines. This is the wine that brought me to English sparkling wine 6 years ago, the 2012 vintage. And we talked about the whole story in the episode with Mary Bridges. I will put the link in the show notes. She's the head winemaker of Gusbourne. And right now, Gusbourne is also up for sale. So if you have some money and you are interested in buying an English sparkling wine company, this might be one for you. It's a bit smaller than Chapel Down and maybe a bit cheaper. Great wines, actually. And this really shows the potential of the English market, not only for sparkling wine, but I mean, the focus is on sparkling wine. But it is interesting, and there will be more companies to come that will be up for sale. And right now, we do a switch from one of my favorite topics, sparkling wine, to another favorite topic. It's about mindful drinking and eating. This does not only account for wine, drink less but better, it also accounts for food. And there is a New York Times restaurant critic who quit his job after he has received the results of his medical exam. And it was exhausting. Blood sugar, cholesterol, everything, all the values he asked for. And he was close to diabetes, fatty liver disease, and metabolic syndrome, and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I was so sad, I was so afraid of those results that I had to quit my job. And I mean, what has he done? He has been working for the New York Times as a food critic for over 10 years now. And he said he discovered that he ate a lot. He ate more than he should. The good thing is that he was less hungry, but in addition, he discovered that he drank more and that he ate desserts even though he didn't have to. And this all led to not only his personal feeling that something is not correct, but also the exam showed that his body is not in the best condition and he should definitely stop with that. And finally, he quit his job. I don't know what you could do after you have been a wine or a restaurant critic after 10 years in the business. I don't know. Maybe you can still be a critic, but not eating all this kind of stuff. Or this eat less but better. Maybe you choose different restaurants, or you go more to restaurants that are focused on a more healthier lifestyle. Could be interesting. So it does not only account for wine or for drinking alcohol in general, it also accounts for food. Less but better. Keep that in mind. When we talk about drinking less but better, there is interesting news from Germany. Our German health minister, Karl Lauterbach, recently announced that he would suggest to stop teenage drinking. What does that mean? The legal drinking age in Germany is 18 years. But there's a rule saying that you are allowed to buy beer and wine at the age of 16. Not the spirits, but just beer and wine. And in addition, you are allowed to drink beer and wine when you're with your parents beginning the age of 14. I still don't get why this rule exists because, I mean, when you say we don't sell alcohol to people under 18 because it's dangerous, they are still in development and it's bad for their health because they are still growing up and stuff. why is it allowed then when you are in company of your parents? Because it's less dangerous then, or because parents are responsible for, I don't know, watching how much you drink? I don't know. I don't get it. I've never gotten this rule. And there's only few countries in the world that have a rule like that. And Germany is the only Western European country that still has this rule. In my opinion, we should definitely get rid of this rule. And as promised, this is not the only change we will see in the future. I said it some episodes before, and I guess this will change even, maybe not worse, but more significantly over the next years. There was recent news that we will have stricter advertising rules for alcohol on social media. And at the moment, it's news from Germany because we have this German Advertiser Council, and they published a new version of their guidelines. For Germany, it says there's not only the protection of people under 18 in general, you have to use these protections given by, I don't know, YouTube or Instagram and stuff like that. And if this is not possible, you should definitely announce it on your own. They have a suggestion for a small paragraph that you have to add on every single post or video you make talking about alcohol. It's not only for the advertisement of alcohol, it's also for videos that are kind of glorifying alcohol. And I mean, sometimes it's meant to be funny, but we all know that in our subconscious mind deals with that in a different way. These rules will apply from August 1, 2024 for every person working in Germany for with social media presence, for influencers as well. They offer free seminars for influencers that they know how to deal with that. And it's also, of course, interesting for wineries and for wine shops in general. The main thing is that the age information is mandatory for producers. For me, it's the first step in the right direction. And I guess this will become way more strict over the next years. Maybe in 10 years, there will be a ban of advertisement for alcohol. We'll see. I've put the link in the show notes. Let me know what you think about that, because it's quite an interesting topic, and especially over the last 10 years where influencers really became a thing for brands, for wine shops, for restaurants, this could change a lot. I mean, we can use that power to bring the mission I just said in the beginning of the episode, drink less but better, to the people, to communicate that to the people, and to focus more on high quality products, on alcohol-free products, to use stuff like zebra striping for yourself. If you don't know what zebra striping is when you say you alternate between a drink with alcohol or without alcohol during the day or during a week or just in general, to drink less alcohol but still enjoy good drinks. I wrote a blog article on that. I put the link in the show notes as well. Why we are talking about new social media guidelines when it comes to advertisement of alcohol, Chile has introduced health guidelines on drinks packaging, only for the domestic market. And this is quite funny because they export, I guess they export around 80% of their wines to foreign countries, so the rest stays in the country. But for the wines that are sold on the domestic market, they have to put 3 different things on the label. It's this: you should not drive when you drunk alcohol. So do not drink when driving. There will be risks to your baby, so don't drink alcohol when you're pregnant. And do not drink if you're under the age of 18. So this legal drinking age once again. And it's actually also, in my opinion, the first step in the right direction. And I just did some research on the current alcohol consumption and situation in Chile. And Chile had a huge alcohol problem over the last 20 years. There is this study from the National Library of Medicine. This one is from 2013, referencing that there is still a problem when it comes to the inhabitants of Chile. And there's another study mentioned from 2008, I guess. And just to give you a quote, in Chile, drinking alcohol constitutes a widely accepted behavior, with more than 50% of the total population between 15 and 64 years of age consuming alcohol, and, attention, approximately 17% of the population considered problematic drinkers. And this is only one reason why Chile said we have to do something. And at least the first step in the right direction is to put this information on the label. And guess what? Who doesn't like it? The producers. And it's not like, I mean, we had this in Europe when those rules were published that we have to add the nutrition facts and the calories on the label because, of course, it's more expensive for the producers. It causes some effort. It causes some work to do. And maybe you don't have the resources, especially as a small company. But nobody was complaining about it. Why we have to do that as a wine company? I mean, there were some people, but just in general, it was more about more effort for the small wineries. Instead of saying, oh, poor wine business, we are so restricted, blah, blah, blah. Over here, it's a more severe topic. And just to give you some quotes, there was one producer saying, back labels are for communicating to the consumer, not for health warnings. If you pay more for a bottle, you want to have more information. You don't want to have a legal thing. And I mean, seriously, if you want to communicate your story, you want to do storytelling through your label, you still can do that. You just have to reserve a small part of the label for those 3 stickers. Another one was, in 20 years, we could have someone with cirrhosis on the label. Yes, because we did it with cigarettes as well. And maybe some of you might not like it, but the problem is, we only think about ourselves. And if we consider ourselves to not having an alcohol problem, many others do. And at least if you have the possibility to save people's lives through that, why not putting it on the label? I would still buy my favorite wine, even though this sticker is on the label, but maybe I think 2 or 3 times more on opening a bottle like that. Could be interesting if there's numbers from the US, because the US at least is dealing with the stickers for pregnant women. I will check that out later. And another one was saying, oh, for Christ's sake, it's like saying to the consumer, here's my delicious wine, it might kill you. And guess what? Yes, this is it. I mean, we know that alcohol is a poison, and we still think that just because we have introduced it in our culture over the last 10,000 years, it should stay like that. It shouldn't. Maybe just too few people know that alcohol is a big problem. I don't know. And we won't kill people by putting stickers on the label, but maybe people will die if we don't do it. And just for me, the first step in the right direction, especially when my country would have an alcohol problem like Chile had in the last decades. Right now, we go from Chile to another country in the Southern Hemisphere to Australia, where one of the pioneers in alcohol-free wine production, Edenvale, has opened a $5 million processing facility for alcohol-free wine to feed the demand. Edenvale started in 2006, I guess, so quite early with alcohol-free wine. And right now they said, we need another facility because there is a huge demand and we want to feed it. It's a facility that uses a new technology, and this technology only requires 1 treatment instead of 2 for the wine. So it's heating up and cooling down in parallel just to save energy and just to give the wine a smoother treatment. Let's put it like this, because it's quite energy consuming to make alcohol-free wine. And in addition, of course, it takes away, usually it's said, 60% of the character of a wine. With this next step in technology, it might be easier to retain the original profile of the wine. We will see that in the future. I've never tasted any bottle of Edenvale, but I will do that in the future, definitely. Coming from alcohol-free wine, we will have a look on the alcohol-free beer market. There was some news based on a study of the Allied Market Research. What is the outlook for non-alcoholic beer? And at least for Germany, there are some numbers saying every 10th beer in Germany, quite a mature market, every 10th beer in Germany is alcohol-free. And I mean, this could happen for other countries, at least for maybe the 10, 12 biggest on the planet as well. They expect a substantial growth over the next 10 years until 2034. And there is many key drivers for this, not only for beer, but beer is one of the biggest markets, actually. The main drivers are the health benefits, because non-alcoholic beer is perceived as healthier than its alcoholic counterpart. Actually, in some studies say that it improves the milk production in your breasts while feeding. It reduces anxiety, and of course, it lowers the heart disease risk. Secondly, there is a consumer shift. We have talked about that in many episodes as well. There's an increasing number of non-drinkers and a demand for sugar-free options, and those are boosting sales, not only during the Olympic Games or the summer of sports. And of course, there is better marketing strategies using AI, using influencers, global expansion by global players that play a huge role, small companies that get really, really successful. We've talked about Athletic Brewing, one of the biggest non-alcoholic beer companies on the planet, started in 2016. Of course, there's also some challenges, and this does not only account for beer, it also accounts for wine and for spirits, alcohol-free ones. The main thing is the taste. It's still quite tough to retain or to be close to the original product. And I always tell people, usually alcohol-free drinks, maybe not the beer, but alcohol-free drinks, they don't want to replace something. They want to add something to the category. So if we are talking about an alcohol-free sparkling wine or an alcohol-free, a sparkling tea or a kombucha, they don't want to replace wine in taste and style. They want to say, this is a new category, this is a new drink, like me, and drink me. And of course, this is something different with beer, and especially with beer, because the original alcohol level, sitting usually around 5%, is lower than compared to wine or spirits. It's easier to come closer to the original taste of a normal beer with alcohol, of alcoholized beer. And of course, if you put them next to each other, you always, or maybe in 80% of the cases, you are able to spot the one with or without alcohol. And of course, if you are used to drink beer with alcohol, some people might say, this doesn't taste like beer. But I would say, if you have a blind tasting of 10 beers, they're all alcohol-free, and you don't tell the people, only few would say that this beer has no alcohol because it still tastes like beer. And those higher sophisticated drinkers, it's the same with wine, with this pyramid saying, 80% is just normal drinkers who like the product, wine or beer. They just want to enjoy the taste. And being closer to the original one is way easier with beer compared to wine. And the other one, of course, is the cost. The production of non-alcoholic beers and wine is usually more expensive than the normal one because just the dealcoholization process adds some cents or maybe sometimes dollars or euros to the production of a bottle. And this is also something we have to keep in mind because usually people think there is no alcohol in it, so it should be cheaper, but that is definitely not the case. And this is also why I think that categories of drinks that have never had any alcohol will be the winners in the future. At the moment, we have those transition products such as alcohol-free beer and alcohol-free wine, and we take a product that has had alcohol and then remove it. When we talk about putting people on kind of a transition to drink less, then it might be an option. But the future definitely belongs to the drinks that have never had any alcohol, but they can also express complexity, balance, intensity, aromas. And you also have drinks where you can just sit on a table with friends and talk about the drink for 15 minutes if you want to get nerdy. And of course, talking about marketing, there is some brands that really know how to do that. And we have talked about Athletic Brewing for several times. And Athletic Brewing offers free brews to celebrate the summer of sports, saying we have Olympia, we have, the Euro, we have Wimbledon, we have, what did I forget? The Tour de France was happening. And if you want to have a fresh drink without alcohol, just apply on our website and we'll send you a free IPA. And when I say IPA, it's alcohol free. And Athletic Brewing is one of those companies who really got famous, not only because they reached a very, very high valuation, but also because they have amazing marketing strategies. They partner up with big companies. They give away free samples, many free samples. They show up in the big supermarkets. They invested a lot in branding and in visibility, and this paid out actually. I've never tasted it, and I hope I will get some in California. Some days ago, I talked to Camille Vidal. She's one of the influencers in the alcohol-free space. She's currently in California and was drinking Athletic, and I asked her, how was it? And she was like, wow, it's amazing. So hopefully I will be able to taste some in the US in 3 weeks. And another company that is doing many things right is Corona, because Corona, they won the tender for the Olympic Games 2024, Winter Games 26, and 2028 in the US. And they will be able to serve Corona Zero in place during the games, of course. And they have this huge visibility through advertisement and through the sports reporting on television, social media, radio, and wherever. And Corona is not under the top 20 when it comes to alcohol-free beer. Heineken has been leading the market for a couple of years now. They ramp up the rivalry and zero alcohol beers. This could get very, very interesting. There are some big players. We have Carlsberg, we have Heineken, we have Corona, and we will see many more because they have big brands and it's easier to add to your portfolio when you already have an existing powerful brand. And Corona, with their deal on the Olympics, will definitely have an advantage. Talking about the Olympics, last news for today. The Olympics just started on July 26th and they already have their first scandal. A Japanese gymnast was banned from the Olympics team of Japan after drinking and smoking. And there's two things that were quite interesting when I read through the article. One, she's only 19 years old. And the legal drinking age in Japan is 20. And she was caught drinking, I guess it was, what was it, beer? It only said alcohol, I guess. She was also smoking. And there is rules in the Japanese Gymnastic Association that says, in our code of conduct is said no smoking and no drinking at all times. And right now, she's the captain, actually, of the team. She was banned from the Olympics. Japan will only compete with 4 athletes. I don't know what to say, actually, because, I mean, there is, every 4 years, you have the possibility to compete in one of the biggest and most respected sports tournaments on the planet. And it's quite tough to even qualify for that. And just to have a beer and a cigarette, you just risk to being kicked out. There were some, I did some research on that, and there were some voices saying that there was a lot of pressure on the team, especially when it comes to gymnastic team, because they haven't won a single medal over the last 60 years since the Olympic Games took place in Tokyo. And this pressure might have led to mental health issues and also caused people to drink and smoke. We don't know that, and I don't want to speculate on that. It's just a tragedy, actually, at least for her and for the team, of course, as well, because you have been preparing for so long, and right now, you're not part of the team. And, I mean, she has done it, and it's totally okay to reject her. But in the end, of course, it's not good for the sport, not for the team in general. That's it for this week, guys. Enjoy the Olympic Games 2024 on TV, on social media, on live streaming, wherever you want to watch it. Enjoy the summer. Have a great weekend. See you on Wednesday. Ciao.